Hello everyone and welcome to this Food and Drink TechHUB Business Support Service webinar on improving efficiencies in food and drink manufacturing. For those of you who don't know, my name is Alistair Trail and I am a Principal Food and Enterprise Consultant for SAC Consulting, and we are delivering the Food and Drink TechHUB Business Support Service on behalf of Highlands and Islands Enterprise. Before we introduce the speakers, I'm just going to spend a few more minutes giving you an overview of the project and how businesses can get involved in the project. Just to let you know, if you can have your microphones set to mute while we're going through the presentations, but there'll also be an opportunity to ask questions of our speakers at the end of the session, with the plan of finishing around about 5 o'clock. So the Food and Drink TechHUB Business Support Service is a 3-year project to work with about 300 food and drink businesses in the Highland Council area to try and help them to develop and grow. It's predominantly working with all businesses in the supply chain sector, from primary producers all the way to the food service and retail size. Businesses that are with the Highland Council area can participate in the workshops and the events, and you make use of our own online resources, but the one-to-one delivery is only for businesses in that Highland Council area. So the project is really focusing on opportunities for technology adoption and innovation related to the food and drink production, manufacturing, and the food and drink supply chain. So the project delivery includes a number of different areas. So it's supporting businesses to develop their growth plans and facilitate and broker specialist technical support. It's about raising awareness and increased implementation of new technologies, so things like digital and automation. It's also about developing collaborations. That might be collaboration between businesses or collaborations involving the public sector, universities, and others in academia as well. And the final thing is to try and give insights into what businesses require and help develop the services of the physical food and drink tech hub, which is currently being in the planning phase and potentially being built in Allness. So this will be a food and drink innovation centre, which would have development kitchens, space for showcasing technologies, for scaling up, for packaging, and also have space for networking, meetings, events, and so forth. So it's just trying to get as much information as we can about what businesses would like from a building if this building is to be commissioned. So the project focuses on a number of different areas, and we offer advice and events and things like product development, prototype testing, scaling up, packaging and product labeling, food safety, shelf life, nutritional analysis, doing some work on sustainability, net zero, low carbon, waste management, resource efficiency. Also working a lot on branding, marketing, business planning, and e-commerce. Also some more technical stuff like equipment specification, technical troubleshooting, factory layout, and that is what the area today we're going to talk about in this food and drink efficiencies webinar. We have a website which is up and running, which is on the High website, and it's there you can go and get more information about the project, and you also register your interest to get some of the support. So this is how we're delivering the support. If you come to an event or register on our website, then you get the opportunity to have a support call with one of our experts. There we can find out a bit more about your business and what your growth ambitions are, what your issues might be, and try and see how the TechHUB Business Support Service can help you through what we're delivering, but also through some side posting to some experts or funding that's available. We're doing technical and networking workshops, which is a combination of face-to-face, online workshops, and also these 1-hour technical webinars. And we're also doing insight and best practice, so creating videos, podcasts. We've got a bi-monthly podcast that comes out, and we're doing infographics and so forth. And then we also have more of our one-to-one delivery. So this is a combination of innovation clinics. So that's where businesses can speak to a panel of experts in a particular area and get some one-to-one advice. So these clinics, you get a 20-minute session with a panel of 4 experts. You put in your questions or issues beforehand. The panel does some research then gives you some vital information, hints and tips so that you can take forward. We're actually going to be doing a packaging clinic on the 11th of September. So that's on Monday next week. We've also got common interest groups. This is where businesses that maybe work in the same area, have the same issues, or in the same subsector, same geographical area, they can come together under a facilitator and try and work together to try and overcome some common issues, common problems, or how they can work together for joint growth. We also have intensive one-to-one support where you can apply for 3 days of an expert's time who can work with a business to overcome a particular challenge, and also some learning journeys, which we haven't done yet, but we'll be doing early next year, where we visit to some interesting businesses or academic institutions that can offer some technical advice. So that's the TechHUB project. So this is the plan for today. So next I'm going to introduce John Johnson from Scottish Enterprise and SMAS, the Scottish Manufacturing Advisory Service, who's going to talk about improving efficiencies in food and drink manufacturing. And then after that, at about 4:30, we'll have Michael Tuff from Refresco giving a case study of how they've improved their efficiencies and made some savings that way. Then at about 10 to 5, we'll do some question and answers, and then I'll give a brief overview at the end and hope to finish at 5 o'clock. So with that, I will now introduce John, who is going to talk about what SMAS can do and about improving efficiencies in your food and drink manufacturing. So over to you, John.
Thanks very much, Alistair, and welcome everyone, and thanks for taking the time out to join our session today. Hopefully myself and Michael will be able to share some of our experiences in improving productivity in the workplace that perhaps you can implement in your business, or perhaps even just getting you start to think of things differently. As you know, within the food and drinks industry, it plays a massive part in the Scottish economy, and within SMAS and as part of Scottish Enterprise, we'll support companies right across Scotland, and especially within the HIE region that way. Just moving on, I'm afraid I'm one of the technical phobes that can't do two things at once, so I need to ask Alistair the next slide here, please. But the key aims for today is what I want to do is talk about and get an understanding in terms of what is productivity, and especially within the context of operations improvement, and hopefully you'll start to get a better understanding and perhaps even starting to think differently. We want you to understand what key wastes and introducing you to the waste that's within a business and within a process. And from that, we can then give you a better understanding of some of the key tools, and Michael will talk on some of the lean tools that he's used within his company to derive the productivity improvements that they've made. And with all the issues that you need to deal with on a daily basis, plus get the product out the door, where are you going to start? So we can move on. So for me, a key question is, what is productivity and how to improve it? And I always remember many years ago, I worked in the electronics boom of the 80s and 90s, and the factory I was working in with a plant manager, and he used to always say, I only look at two measures within the business. One is the units per head and the units per square foot. And if for him, he always used to say that's the key inputs, you know. And if I achieve and within the parameters there, I know that the output will be that will make profit. And that was a big drive, and it was a big learning curve for me. And that I'm maximising my head count, and I'm making the most of the space that I've got, because they're the two key areas in terms of cost within the business. He used to always say, from a material point of view, the competition's probably going to be paying near enough the same price as I'm paying. However, if I make the most of my people in the floor space and be creative around that, then that way we can drive profit and productivity within the business. So from a productivity point of view, the question to yourself is, are you utilising your people as much as you can? From there, if you can then drive that with further investment, and when I say investment, it's not only in a monetary point of view of equipment and processes, but also in terms of investing in your people. There, and if you can then start to drive innovation, and from an innovation point of view, it's not just about new products, it's more about getting your people to think of different ways in which you do things to drive that. And if you can forward into that, the chances of success in driving productivity improvements are going to be far, far higher. All right, Alistair, next slide. So for me, starting off with people, there's two key areas to think about. And most companies that we're speaking to today, just now, recruitment's a massive issue for them in terms of not only can they not get people, wages are going through the roof. And so from that, the question I'm asking people is, imagine if you can become the preferred employer of choice within your area that people are wanting to. There's examples out there that companies that just, not because they pay the most money, but it's because in terms of as an employer, people want to work for their companies. So I'm challenging businesses now and asking, how do you make people feel valued within your company? How do you develop your team that's going to then drive that? And then from then, once you've attracted them to join you, what do you have in place for staff retention? And once you get them, how do you develop them further? And how do you get them taken? Imagine you've got a situation where they're going to take accountability, ownership of problems or processes within it. How much easier is that going to make your business, your life even there? And if I think back to my production management days, for me, as a leader within the business, the key aspect for me from a people perspective is when people come in the front door, am I getting them to switch the light on or are they switching the light off when they come in? And where I'm coming from there is when they come in and the light's switched on, they're involved, they're taking ownership for issues, they're trying to drive the product through the factory, or is it a case of when they come in and switch off, they wait to get told what to do next? They don't think what they can do, they're just waiting to get told. So from that, the question I'm asking yourselves is, within your business, are you switching people on or are you switching them off? And a key way in terms of for me to start off there, Alistair, we can go on to the next slide. From a development people is introducing them into what we call the lean tools. And for me, it starts off with what we call 8 wastes. And from that, if you think about it, even a new start coming into an area, part of their training development of a new job or a new process, introducing them to what potential waste could be within that. And if you can start to identify what the wastes are, how can you then start to make improvements is a question. And some of you may already have seen this before in terms of the Toyota who kicked it off. But for me, the thinking here is there might be others within your business. And I was speaking to a company recently who said their biggest issue that they have out with the 8 wastes I've identified here was when they're specifying a job, the conversation that they have with the client causes a lot of rework because they're not properly spec'd out what it is true requirements are there. So the first one for me is an anagram and a way of remembering it is downtime. Start off from a defects. How much impact does rework or scrap have in your business? And is it driven through whether it's the wrong work instructions or the training wasn't good enough? That's an example of waste within your business. Are you overproducing? And where I'm saying there is, are you making more than is actually needed? Because most times, I see so much of people will make more than is actually what the orders are for. And what happens then, it's left lying about the factory and we're having to move it out the road and then we end up reworking it. And then from that, we end up to get rid of it, we sell it cheaper. So how much of an impact and a cost does that have in the business? We've then got, from a waiting perspective, waiting time. How often are you waiting in product, waiting in material, waiting in your boss to tell you what to do next? Always looking for, for me, it's always look for flow. So within an area or a process, are things flowing through freely or are they having to stop and start? If they stop starting, there's an issue. What is that issue? How can we start to remove that to create that flow? And in so many businesses, waiting time is such an impact. The things aren't, I need to wait till so-and-so comes back before I can start that. Well, wait a minute, how much lost time is that and impacting the business? The next one we have is non-utilising of talent. You know, so from that drives me to ask the question, do we really know our teams? Have we got to know in terms of skills, the talent that's within your company? And do we give them that opportunity? I always remember a few years back, I worked at Amazon. And one of the big drivers there was in terms of from January the 1st, you worked towards what they call peak, October to December time, and you were putting in place the plans. And through the course of 3/4 of the year, we're sitting with 200, 250 full-time employees. But come peak, we could go up to 2,500 to 3,000 people. So the big key part there was in terms of training and developing new people quickly. And I remember having a chat with one of the guys that we had online. And just as I was doing my daily walkabout, I had a chat, and the chap was saying that he used to live in Bahrain and work in Bahrain, and my in-laws used to stay there. And I said, and I asked the question, why was that? What were you doing it there? And he says, I worked with the Air Force, the Bahrain Air Force, because I used to be a trainer with the RAF. And that was music to my ears. There's this guy, just through this conversation, I started to find out that he had a training background. But that was like, I was like, the world's just lit up that I can take that skills. So it's about going and understanding your teams. Do they have that skill base? We can then look at in terms of the waste of transportation, which is how does the product material get about your factory, or even information? How does it get from one person to another? Is it having that somebody goes and walks the length of the factory every day to tell you what to do next? So, from there, from transporting product materials, is it close at hand, or do we need to go and walk for miles there? Then we can start to look at inventory, and that's a challenging one just now, especially after Brexit, whereby the strain in companies in terms of the full supply chain network and waiting to try to source materials, and it is a big challenge. Normally, I'll try and keep that as low as possible because it's money you've paid out and you've not get back in. But just now, with the current constraints, it's a challenging one. But I always ask the question, is it factored into your budget for next year that you're going to have additional costs because of inventory and the lead times it's impacting? And don't think about it. So many people think, well, I can get it at that lower cost price, but you end up with a year's worth of stock. Well, was it really worth it? Or did you just pay a wee bit extra? So looking at it that way and getting your teams to start to think that way as well. Then from a motion point of view, that's more, rather than transportation, has to do more with the person, the people aspect in terms of the movement about, the twisting and turning, etc. Having to walk around pallets for boxes that have been unused for months and years. They're just sitting there in their way and they're walking around them rather than moving the obstacle and removing it. So think about that from a motion perspective there. And then if you think about it, the last but not least is extra processing. Are you actually doing more than what the customer's willing to pay for, shall we say, or what's required? Does the people in your shop floor, are they filling in paperwork that no one looks at? That's a great example. So it's so often I'll go into places and straight away I see people filling in paperwork and I say, what happens with that next? Or I leave it there, and then what happens? It's left in a pile and so why do it in the first place? And it was started because it was an issue years ago, but we've never taken the issue's been resolved, but we've never taken that extra paperwork away. So think about yourself in terms of, are we doing extra more than what the customer's actually willing to pay for? On you go, Alistair. So from that, we've started to look at in terms of the people. If you think about your team starting to understand and being able to identify what wastes are within your processes, we can then look at it from an investment point of view. And where I start off there is, have you identified the constraint within your area, within your factories? There's so many examples out there that we've seen whereby you'll go into a company and they've bought a new machine or they've added more people to a process and they're saying, but we're not getting any more out. Well, 9 times out of 10, it's because that wasn't the constraining part of the business. But we go and we feed this new machine because we're not allowed to let it stop, but it just builds up and the inventory builds up and builds up in the station afterwards. So So for there, start to think about, have you properly mapped out your processes and then said, from the data, where is the constraint? And I'm not sure if somebody jumped in there, sorry. And from that, what I'm then starting to ask the question is, from a non-value adding activity, which are often the jobs that people don't like, they don't like doing, they're heavy, they're repetitive, they get bored. Can we remove them, or can we start to reduce them? And from an investment perspective in driving product, there's a lot of new equipment out there that isn't massive investment required. And we're seeing a lot more, just the photograph here of cobots being introduced to processes. It's not full automation. Even if I think back to my Amazon days, Amazon didn't bring in automation into a site had been up and running for several years, because it's only used for 3 months of the year. The other, will just pallet shuffle. So think about it. It's not massive investment. There's a lot of low-cost options out there. And from that, I've got a wee video there that perhaps Stuart can share with you to see if we've got the time. Alistair, sorry, I'm saying Stuart. Alistair. Okay, so it's just a wee example to get you thinking what's out there, in terms of starting to use equipment, and especially when you've got the problem around about getting staff, is to think about, wait a minute, the non-value activities, can I start to get some investments, from likes of support from Scottish Enterprise, from HIE, to buy this type of kit, to bring that in, because I can't fill it with a person. Can we start to use them? So moving on there to last but not least, in terms of innovation. And for that, if you start to think about it, innovation doesn't always mean new products. For me, it's about identifying problems that you have existing within the current workplace just now, and with the team working at ways of how we can find a solution for that, and using some problem solving techniques, etc., getting the staff engaged. That for me is about innovating and doing things differently in the way you're currently doing it today. It's different tomorrow. And perhaps look at other areas in terms of out with your network and suppliers, etc. Have they had the type of issues? Start to ask the question, and don't be shy to ask likes of ourselves for help, etc. Out there, there's a lot of different ways in terms of what you can innovate. And if I can finish off just with a couple of quotes here, in that, Peter Krugman was one of the chief economists that's out there. He says productivity in the short run doesn't amount to very much. It's these wee small incremental improvements, but in the long run, it means everything. And if you think about that, making the small, steady improvements within your business, that will only benefit more in the long run. And last but not least, there's a wee barrier there. There's a guy out there, Paul Akers, I think he's great, who drives a lot of the lean tools, and is author of a book called 2 Second Lean. And for him, innovation comes down to that money can be the barrier to creativity. And if you look at it, it's not about spending loads of money and buying all these new sexy machines and equipment. It's just about getting people involved, getting them looking at problems, working together and coming up with the solutions. So thanks very much for your time, folks. that way. If I can pass you on to Michael, who'll give you share some of his experience in terms of real life experiences that he's had with driving productivity improvements in his business. Thanks, Michael.
Okay, thanks very much, John. Good afternoon, everybody. So I can just introduce my company, Refresco, probably a company that most of you on the call have never actually heard of. If you can move to the next slide, Alistair. So who are Refresco? We're actually the world's largest independent bottler of a variety of soft drinks, alcoholic drinks, carbonated drinks for various retailers and A brands. We do some work with Coca-Cola, etc. And today we currently produce about 30 million litres every day across 60 locations in 12 countries. We currently have about 6 locations in the UK, of which Macduff is one of them. We make the MacB brand, so we do a range of still flavoured waters, the #1 seller in Scotland. And a little bit of history about me. So I've been in the food industry since the 80s, since I graduated from Robert Gordon's Institute of Technology, way in the days before it was a university. And my career has seen me working in a variety of industries, from running fairly large red meat plants, slaughter and processing, packing, seafood operations, doing chilled, frozen, coated products. I ran a fish farm for a Norwegian company up in Orkney, and I'm now currently running this bottling plant for Refresco. And my journey with lean really started in the red meat. I worked with a company called Buchan Meat at the time, and we introduced a new modified atmosphere packaging line, and we were really struggling to meet a customer order, and we just couldn't understand why we couldn't get the throughput, why we couldn't get the hit rate, etc. And we started working with a company, and that was where my understanding of using lean and OEE to drive productivity through a business. And I've used that lessons many, many times now over in my career. So you just want to move to the next slide, Alistair. So I just wanted to talk you through a real example of what we did here at Refresco. So when I joined the business, we had a system where we were measuring our OEE on a daily basis. And I've seen this in so many businesses throughout my career, where it just became a number, but there was no real ownership, understanding, challenge of what was actually driving that number. What did it mean if we had 45%? What did it mean if we had 55%? Why did we move from 45 to 55? And the line here in Macduff was operating consistently around the 50-55% OEE. But it had been that forever. And no one had actually said, well, okay, what do we need to do to move that dial a little bit? What do we need to do to drive a little incremental improvement in our business? So what I did was, and I'm a great believer in keeping it very, very simple. I sat down with the team and asked them some questions. So what did they understand about OEE? And, how could they influence that? How could they change that? So I talked them through the 3 elements about availability. Very simply, plan shift times 8 hours. I'm measuring how much time within that 8 hours am I actually running. Performance, understanding, so what's the plated speed of the line that you're running, the filler or the labourer or whatever. And what is our defect rate? What is our rework rate? So it was getting them to break it down into those 3 very small, simple elements and say, okay, this is what the machine is telling. This is what is actually happening. So you're going to move to the next slide, Alistair. So as I said, we took each measure and I worked with the team to say, right, what's the low-hanging fruit? Very simple stuff in terms of availability. Looking at our changeovers, we do 2 sizes. We work from a 500ml bottle or a 1.5 litre. We were doing a 330ml litre and that may come back in. So understanding how was our changeovers? What was our planned changeover time? Was it 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes? what were we actually achieving? Who was, responsible? So, taking the Formula One analogy of the guy coming into the pit, changing the tyres and so on, everybody had a duty to perform to achieve a very efficient changeover, and then working, how can we improve that? How can we make that from 15 minutes down to 14 minutes, and so on and so on. Break times, guys going off the line stopping, bringing people back. And again, that's just simple things, and making the team aware of the impact of that line starting at 6 o'clock in the morning or starting at 6:05 in the morning. And then measuring or using short interval control boards, just to identify the stoppages and the reasons, so that you could have an understanding of, well, why did my line stop? What's the most frequent reason for it? And then using, PDCA, where we can take that top 3 or the top 1 and actually work through it as a team and say, right, so what caused that? What could we do? What's our agreed action? Who's doing what when? And then see, did that action actually deliver the improvement that we desired? Performance, again, understanding if the machine should run at 16,000 units an hour or 18,000 or 20,000, that has to be our target speed. And understanding why are we not achieving that speed? And then working through a very structured process where we made small changes, measured it, we're back up there. And then defects, actually saying, so what are the defects? What are the reasons for our defects? Do we have underfill? Do we have overfill? Is the cap on straight? Is the cap not tight? And so on and so on. So we just went through all of them, identified low-hanging fruit, got the guys and the team engaged in it, put our actions in place, and then saw some improvements starting to come through. So if you want to move to the next slide, Alistair. So the outcome was that we actually delivered in excess of £100,000 savings per annum just by focusing on the OEE on our line. The line's now operating consistently at 70%. I'm able to go to our marketing and commercial teams and say, look, we've got spare capacity to sell. They can now go out there and do a variety of promotional work or introduce other products for us. The unit cost is reduced, the wastage is reduced, and we've actually got an upskilled workforce that now approach improvements with a new way of thinking, living in that CI culture. And I think John touched on that. And it was getting people to see the influence that they can have, the changes that they can make that will drive that improvement in the business, rather than, well, I'll just stand here and wait for you to tell me what to do. So if you want to move to the next one, Alistair. And that isn't without its challenges. Of course it isn't. When you have a well-established process and you have a well-established team, nobody likes change. So the question's being pushed back, why are we doing this? It's working now. There's no need to change anything. We're hitting the orders eventually. We might work a little bit of overtime. It's always been like that. You'll have heard those statements from your teams many, many times. And they were reluctant to try because it might not work. It might fail. So what? It might fail. It might be that we've put the wrong action in place. But understanding it and working as that team and getting some real quick wins, using new ways of working, and it actually started to embed really quickly. And then it spreads across the site, and you start to see significant cost savings, and you see it in your numbers. My accountant will say to me, if I can't see it on the bottom line, it didn't really happen. But it's a really, really good way of engaging people, getting them involved in your process, making them understand how they can actually influence that improvement, and then obviously drive cost savings into your business, make you more profitable and out there to fill that capacity. I think that's it, Alistair.
Okay, thank you very much. That was great. Thank you. And thanks, John, as well, for your presentation as well. Very interesting stuff. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for the time being. Yeah, so I just wanted to mention a couple of things before we finish. So The first one is that we are currently open for applications for common interest groups, which I mentioned at the beginning. So if you are working in the same sector or have the same plans for growth or in the same geographical area, there's opportunity for you to apply to set up a common interest group. This is where we will then allocate you a specialist facilitator who will then work with the applicant to bring companies together. So it might be that you are just a company on your own, but you think this would be a great idea if you got together with other companies in the same area and to form this group. We will help you then identify these companies, approach them and set up the first meeting. Then the facilitator can be used to bring in external experts, bring in support, try and find access to funding if you want to do some projects and so forth. So it's a really good resource, and we're open to applications at the moment. We're just finishing up 2 projects at the moment. The first one is the Highland Distillers Group. So we've got 16 distillers in the Highland Council area that have come together to collaborate on things like logistics, tourism, and net zero. And then we've also got a project that's called the Black Isle Feast Project, which is about encouraging collaboration on the Black Isle to showcase the local produce. We've just approved funding for a third project, which is called the Highland Cake Club, which is all about encouraging collaboration between small-scale artisan bakers and bakeries. So that project will just start off next month. And as I say, we're looking for other applications. So are interested in collaborating with other businesses to grow, then please apply there, and then we can allocate you a facilitator who can help set up and start off the group. Just scan the QR code or the links there. But I'll be sending out the presentation after as well, so you can get more information on that. We have a couple of events coming up. The first one, as I mentioned earlier, is the Food and Drink TechHUB Packaging Clinic, which is on Monday, the 11th of September, where 6 businesses have the opportunity to speak to a panel of packaging experts from the packaging industry, specialising in plastics, bio, materials, labelling and packaging design and environmental aspects. So we've actually had a huge number of applications for that. So the 6 spaces have already been allocated. So there's no spaces left for that. But if you are interested, then we could run another packaging clinic maybe early next year and get that going again. So that's been quite popular. And then the next thing we're doing is we're doing a food and drink networking event. This will be taking place during Inverness Business Week, which is on Thursday, the 28th of September, and that'll be from 4 p.m. till 6 p.m. at Ulebeast Distillery and Brewery, which is in Inverness, just on the River Ness in the centre. And this will be an opportunity to see some presentations from businesses that are talking about overcoming challenges, how they've done something a bit differently to try and grow sales and so forth. And also be an excellent opportunity to do some networking. There'll be canapes, there'll be drinks, and there'll also be an optional site tour of the distillery there, which is really worth a visit. So if you are interested in coming along to that, then there's the QR code there you can scan, and the emails will be coming out and with invitations. So please come along. It'll be a great chance to an informal way to meet other food and drink businesses, entrepreneurs, and to get some peer-to-peer support and sharing issues, best practice, so forth. So great place to network and to meet some of our team and some of the other people that can supply advice in the Highland Council area. So please come along to that if you can. We also have a podcast which we are delivering. We have 5 episodes of the podcast out already, and the podcast is called Food and Drink Business Bites, and it is hosted by my colleague Kerry Hammond. And this really is just interviews with businesses that are prominent in the food and drink side in the Highland region, talking about their growth, the support they received from the TechHUB project, and also has some interesting stories about things that are happening in the sector, upcoming events, workshops, and that type of thing. So the first 5 episodes are now available on your usual platform for listening to podcasts, and the 6th episode is be coming out in the next week or 2, which is on the theme of food trends. So that should be an interesting listen, and it should come out maybe at the end of September. So delighted if you could sign up and listen to them. I think that they're pretty good. And also we have an event feedback form. So we'll be delighted to just get some feedback. So that's the QR code there for that. But I'll be sending out a link for that after the event. And there you can just give us some feedback on how you thought it went, and then areas for improvement or ideas you have for other events that would be beneficial for companies in the food and drink side. So yeah, please give us your thoughts if you can. It should only take a couple of minutes. So that's me. Thank you very much for joining today. That's my contact details if anybody wants to get in touch. I will stop sharing my screen. So it's really just to say thank you very much for our two speakers, John and Michael. That was interesting stuff, and I think there's a lot of good information there to help help businesses. Just to say thank you all for coming along. I know it's end of the day can always be tough, but no, thanks very much for coming along. I hope you found it beneficial. And yeah, please get in touch if you think we can be any help in the Food and Drink project, or if you want to come along to our upcoming event, especially the one on the 20th of September. I think that'd be a good opportunity to network with other businesses. So thank you very much, and hope we'll see you again. So thank you.